Hey, Coach.
Hey.
When you are.
Okay. All right. Okay, guys. Hey, had a busy week here of preparation for the Big Ten tournament here, and obviously we don't know which team we are going to play, but we do know both teams. It's going to be a great challenge. Both teams, obviously, we played Minnesota once. They beat us at their place, and then we split with Northwestern in 2 close games. So it should be a fantastic Big Ten tournament all around, and obviously it's going to be a challenge there tomorrow afternoon. So looking forward to getting started here.
Okay, we'll open it up with Steve Hellwagen.
Hey, Coach. You've been around the guys here the last several days since the Illinois game. I'm sure you had a day off or whatever to kind of recharge. Just your thought, is this group kind of intent on getting a fresh start and getting everything kind of going in a different direction, or I don't know, how would you term it, and what's your feeling being around the team and kind of setting the tone for this team starting this next chapter?
Yeah. I think everybody's in a good place. I think normally, as you'd expect, we watch film on Sunday. So normally, as you'd expect, disappointed. But a lot of good things from that game, and a lot of good, really outside of the Iowa game. There've been some really good things come out of this stretch. So guys are in a great place here and ready to move forward to tournament play.
I'll ask you about Zed Key. He made 4 shots in the first half against Michigan State, 2 shots in the first half against Illinois, and then didn't play a whole lot in the second half of either of those games. He's 25 games in. They say at this point you're no longer a freshman. Is he showing you that maybe he's ready to be pushed a little harder and amp it up from 12 minutes a game to 15 or 18? And what does he need to do to get in the meaningful minutes in the second half of some of these games?
Yeah, no, I think he's obviously had a great freshman year. I think the challenge is playing him and EJ together at times defensively. That's been our biggest challenge, and obviously that's a direction we'll move to next year for sure. But both those guys have to get better at guarding what we see in college basketball, and that is, one of those bigger 4-guard lineups. And that's where both guys have struggled at this point, and that's impacted overall some of our minutes. But when we can play those guys together, it helps us increase his minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, Patrick Murphy.
Chris, you mentioned both Minnesota and Northwestern. When you have a situation like this, how much extra scouting goes into each team? How does that kind of work for you guys when it could be one of 2 teams and you're kind of sitting watching?
Yeah, it's interesting. I can't remember being involved in many situations like this where you're playing 2 teams, not sure. There's really not, obviously Northwestern just beat Minnesota at Minnesota a couple weeks ago, but there's not a clear. I'm not sure. I think it's going to be a close game. So it's interesting how you prepare for it, because I've not been in many of these situations come conference tournament. I think long story short, what we've done is tried to prepare for both as much as we can without overwhelming our guys with preparation for 2 opponents. So we'll have a long night tonight after the game as coaches in terms of finalizing, putting the final touches on the game plan. So it'll be a long night. We'll be in Indianapolis for the game. We can't live scout. We'll be watching as a coaching staff. Our players will have dinner. We'll meet with our players probably once, maybe twice after that, and then meet again in the morning.
And I've been asked a few times by fans and friends and whatnot about, how much do you guys need to win to feel good about things after the way the season ended? And, I don't know if I obviously you want to win the Big Ten tournament, right? But just to kind of get momentum, get feeling right again, is there a number in your mind? Hey, we need to get a couple games here before we head in the tournament, or is it not even something you think about?
I think you obviously think about your guys feeling good about themselves. Having said that, I think they recognize they put themselves in really good position in a couple of their games, and you don't do that without playing well. I don't look at this stretch and say, wow, we've had 4 games where we have played really, really poorly. That's not been the case. I think if that was the case, I'd be much more concerned. I think our guys would be much more concerned. Having said that, I think the feeling good about yourself and getting a win is important. But at the end of the day, you know how this thing works. You've seen it before. Guys can go in to tournament time really hot and struggle, and go in really struggling and get hot. It's an unknown. What you want to try to focus on is being healthy and playing well. And we just have to play a little bit better. But again, I think we play really well in some stretches here. But you do want them to feel kind of the reward of a win.
Okay, next up, Adam Jardy.
Chris, somewhat along those lines, you talk about not really knowing who to prepare for, and tonight will be a late night. But does that allow you this week to focus in more on just yourself? Like, are you able to do more self work as opposed to being focused on a specific matchup?
Yeah, we have tried to focus on ourselves at the same time, knowing that you're going to try to prepare, have a piece of every practice where you're preparing for the opponent, and that's what we tried to do in every practice. Monday was a little more geared towards us. Most of practice. Tuesday was a little more geared towards preparation for what we could see, particularly in this first game. And then today will be the same thing. So, I think we've not, we don't have a ton of, obviously we practiced a few days here, but, you're not spending 2 hours on the floor anymore. It's pretty quick in terms of how much.
I just wondered if, because the way the season ended and having so many games in such a sort of a short span of time, you had talked about just the lack of general practice time.
Yeah.
And if you're not spending 2 hours in each practice on the court, if this was maybe a chance, I guess you did have a couple days between the last 2 games, but if this was maybe your first significant chance in a while to work on 1 or 2 things that you really wanted to get done as a team.
It did help us going into the Illinois game that we were able to have some more practice time, but we also had, we had a number of guys, we had a few guys out of practice, so that makes it disjointed, but it did help us, honestly. I felt like it helped our team to have some of those practices focused on us.
Okay, next up, Clay Hall.
Hi, Chris. Sounds like your team is in a good headspace. You're not worried about them being in a funk of any kind. But what do you need to do to win? Is there a chapter in the book on finishing, closing, just getting to the finish line and a W?
Yeah, we've got to be better in certain areas right now. As I mentioned after the game, I think we had some clean looks that we just missed that you've made in some of those games where you've closed them out, Clay. And then we had a couple poor possessions where we forced the action, and then we had two defensive errors. So you're trying to clean that up as much as possible. You're focusing on that in film. But I think that's it. I think we've just got to be a little better in those areas. And obviously we don't need wholesale changes, or else I think that would have been evident in terms of the score in those games. I just think we've got to be better in those areas I talked about.
When you get in the Big Ten tournament and you're, I don't know, do you sense a ratcheting up of urgency or pressure, or guys, this is a new brand of ball that we play here, and the Big Ten tournament is a chance to play without ending a season kind of thing?
Yeah. I think there's an excitement and an anticipation for every team that goes into it. As you know, Clay, every team that goes into tournament time, those teams right now that know they're playing beyond the Big Ten tournament, I think still feel great anticipation about playing well and moving forward. I think those teams that know this is their final shot to get into the NCAA tournament are going to play with great urgency. So that's what makes, I think, conference tournaments special, even in power leagues, is there's some urgency across the board. And that's an exciting thing. Whether you're guaranteed a spot in the NCAA tournament, like several of us are, or teams that are trying to fight their way to win the at-large berth or the automatic bid.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks, Clay.
Okay, Mitch, Stacy, AP.
Hey, Chris, I wanted to ask you about the post-game ceremony that recognized the seniors last week. You know, I thought the scene with no parents on the court and empty seats and the quiet, it just kind of illustrated the all-around strangeness of the season.
Yeah.
And I just wondered how that felt to you, how that whole scene felt to you.
I mean, it felt awkward and in some ways, just I was just disappointed for our players. But it's reality. It's not anybody's fault. This is not blaming anybody. You feel disappointed for your players to not experience that, your seniors to not experience that with their family down there and with whoever want to remain. And we've been fortunate, since we started that our first year, that there's been a number of fans that stick around. Not everybody does, but usually win or lose, we have a large portion of fans that do stick around. So, you just kind of feel it is what it is. We all recognize that, but you're disappointed for those two seniors.
I thought that moment, especially when Kyle was addressing his parents up in the stands, it was like, it was like this private moment because, there was not that many people there to see it. And it was just, I don't know, it was just kind of this touching, almost private moment, I thought.
Well, he feels things deeply as a kid. And both he and CJ, as I said, are unbelievable kids and unbelievable representatives of our program. Kyle, I think they were both incredibly emotional. I think it speaks to who they are, that they were that emotional. Some of it was how tough and challenging the game was, but I just think the emotion of it all speaks so much to those guys. They really have invested so much into our program, and it speaks to who they are.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, next, Andy Evans.
Oh, sorry, I take it off mute. Chris, these are two teams, obviously, that you faced, the one being Minnesota that got the best of you guys by the largest amount of any team that you got beat by this season. But the fact that they do have some bigs, they might have Liam Robbins back for this game if you end up facing Minnesota. Is there a sense of some sort of retribution, even though you did split with the Wildcats, at least if you face Minnesota, that there's that extra kind of motivation to get out there on the court and get a little payback?
Yeah, I think this time of year, both teams are going to be highly, highly motivated, Andy, to be honest with you. And, any edge helps for sure. But I think it really does, because both teams are so motivated. They're two teams. Minnesota's obviously a team that had this was playing incredibly well, then had some injuries and, has just struggled. So now they're fighting for that automatic bid. And Northwestern is a team who is really been playing well here of late. So I think everybody's kind of motivated this time of year, but obviously you're always looking for added motivation. But I think, any team involved come tournament time has a lot on the line.
And as far as Seth's role, he's been playing maybe just a bit under what his season average has been. What is his role right now, and what is it moving forward, at least here in the Big Ten tournament?
Yeah, same. He just has to continue to I think in my mind, he's done some things really well. He's got to continue to help us in some areas defensively. But similar role, he needs to come in, be an aggressive offensive threat and play with effort. I thought he has done that in some of these games. It wouldn't surprise me to see his minutes increase.
All right, thanks, Coach.
Okay, next, Bill Landis.
Hey, Chris, in these late game offense situations, I'm wondering just what the balance is between wanting to run some of your set stuff, but then also maybe just kind of putting two guys like Dwayne and EJ who are on the guard in a ball screen and just kind of letting them create and play off each other, and like how you try to strike that balance in the last few minutes of a game.
Yeah, it is a balance. And, I think, we were really effective of that. And really from like the 7-minute mark to the 3.5-minute mark of that particular game. Then they switched a matchup and put a smaller guy on EJ and took away some of our advantage there. I think there is a balance there. Ultimately, players are going to decide games and win games. We know that in so many cases. And again, I thought we had some really simple stuff where, Dwayne had a really clean look going to his left off of just a simple action where you try to put Kofi in ball screen situation. We just missed the shot. But I do think there's a balance there where you don't want to over-script it, because at the end of the day, sometimes you're going to score, off a specific action, maybe like we did late against Indiana a couple years ago. But, I can count on one hand where I've seen that. In a lot of cases, it ends up being a player making a play. So there's a balance there for sure.
And when you look at some of the shot distribution in those moments, not even last game, just sort of in the last maybe 4 or 5 games, or even on the season, EJ doesn't take a ton of those late game shots, but I think respect that it's maybe hard to get a guy who is a little more post oriented the ball with any kind of frequency at the end of the game. So just how difficult is it to get the ball into your hands of a guy that I think most people would say is your best player when he's not, a guard who's going to bring the ball off the floor?
It's harder. We ran the one action for him where he got, and they had 3 guys on him, and he did what he had to do. He kicked it out. And then another action that he got in the mid post, I think when we were down 3, and just got walled up. So, there's some things that we've done to isolate him, but obviously I think at this point of time, Bill, when you're playing, teams for the second and third time, often what you see is some other guys step up after they take away maybe your first or second option. And that's what we need to be open to seeing as well.
Okay, Spencer Holbrook.
Chris, you talk about how the guys are in a good mindset and they have a positive attitude right now, but how relieving is it to know that this is almost just like a second season, like a new season starting tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it creates, a lot of excitement. I think tournament time creates a lot of excitement. I think they're anxious. Obviously, this being taken away from them last year as every other Big Ten team. But I just think in general, they're excited and they're aware of what's coming here, not just this week, but beyond. But right now, obviously, our focus is just on the Big Ten tournament. I think they also understand how good this league is and that every game is going to be a tremendous challenge. And I'm sure, there's some excitement about just being a part of it.
Okay, Stephen Means.
Coach, despite the results of the games, early in the season, we talked to you about when you guys were having a lot of success. It just seems sustainable, just given the way some of the guys were playing, their shot selection, the way they were executing on the court. It seemed like things that they could do at this point in the season. Despite some of the results of these games, are you still pretty happy with with overall execution, how your team is playing?
Yeah, I am. As I mentioned, I think outside of the Iowa game where I just did not feel like we had a whole lot of competitive juice, Stephen. I just didn't think we brought it in that game like we have. The game at Michigan State was just unlike any game I've experienced. It was so physical, but I thought we did some really good things in that game. We all know how well they've been playing, particularly there the last month or so. I just think, there have been large segments of the game where I've been really pleased with things. I just think it's the balance between owning as coaches and players what we have to do better, and then also recognize, you're not in these positions either late in games or in 1 or 2 possession games against good teams if you're not, playing reasonably well on stretches. And yet at the same time, you got to own how you got to do some things better.
And then I know last year, after that season got canceled, you were pretty confident that that was a Sweet 16 caliber team, the way they were playing. I know you're not going to sit here and tell us what round you think this team is capable of getting to, but with the way some of the highs have looked, and now that we've seen what a low looks like with this team, are you still pretty confident in how deep of a run in both this tournament and what comes after this, how deep of a run this team can make?
I feel confident in our group. I don't know that I've went, once the season gets over with is when I got to ask a lot of those questions about our team last year when we knew it was all shut down. And I just looked at the numbers and I said, okay, it was our most balanced Ohio State team in 3 years, offensively and defensively. And I thought that gave us a chance to certainly advance just based on historically what numbers like our numbers last year looked like. This year we're a little bit imbalanced in some areas, right? We know that our offense has been a lead. Our defense has struggled at times. So I think for us, I really like our group. I really do. I like our team. Obviously, we've had some outstanding wins. But I think you don't really assess all that outside. I feel confident with our group. I really like our group, but I don't really reflect a whole lot in the midst of it as much.
Thanks.
Okay, Brendan Gulick.
Hey, Chris, wanted to ask you maybe a question that might cross over with a similarity to football. So when Ohio State lost to Clemson a couple of years ago, they had kind of used that as a driving point throughout the entire offseason and to really drive them through this past season. And obviously it turned out well for them. When the Big Ten tournament, fairly suddenly, and college athletics fairly suddenly came to a stop last year, and obviously the disappointment that immediately onset from that, was that at all a driving factor for you guys as you prepared to get back to this point, knowing that, come this year, you would have an opportunity to hopefully play in this tournament?
I think our guys, I understand the question. I think our guys were just focused on hoping to have a season, and to some degree in completion. And I don't think they gave a whole lot of thought necessarily to, I want to definitely have a Big Ten tournament and NCAA tournament. I think they were just hoping to play games and have a season and play with their brothers. And I think beyond that, they didn't put a whole lot of thought into what was taken from them outside of, they just wanted to play a game. Now, I think as the season progressed and as they got deeper into the season, as I've mentioned, I think they wanted to play in the Big Ten tournament, even though, it's been a foregone conclusion for a while that we were going to be an NCAA tournament team. I still think they wanted to play every game they could play. So I think that's where those guys are at right now.
And then real quick on Michi, obviously this is his first chance at NCAA postseason action. What do you want to see from him, even if it has nothing to do with his playing time if he gets in games? What do you want to see from him to know that, he's taking this in and feeling comfortable with his surrounding, with his teammates, whatever it might be, so that when he gets a chance, he's ready to rock?
I've seen it in practice. He's had a great approach. I've seen everything I need to see in practice. He's just obviously playing behind CJ right now. But I've seen it in practice. He's had a great approach. He's done some really good things. And obviously we've seen it in games here as well. But no, I'm really pleased with where he's at.
Great. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Adam.
Sorry, couldn't get the unmute button. Chris, you guys haven't gotten to the free throw line as much as you were earlier in the season. I know that was a big part of why you were able to be as successful as you were. And when you have guys like CJ and Dwayne, they can shoot it the way they can. Is that just the way these games have unfolded? Has anything changed on that front? Is that something you think you can get back to?
Some of it, I think, Adam, we do have to get there a little bit more. And we did settle a little bit too much in the last game at times. But I do think some of that is probably how the games have been called, but some of that is we have to be more intentional about getting to the free throw line for sure.
And do you feel any weird, I don't know if deja vu is the right word, but just going back to Indiana, going back to Illinois and just thinking, I mean, it was a year ago today, we had our last in-person press conference and coronavirus was barely even a thing yet. And does any of that, as you're preparing for all of this, does any of that ever filter into your mind of just like what it's going to be like to go back there?
It might be as we take the bus over. It might be a little deja vu. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. At that point, everything was normal though. Restaurants were full, hotel was full. It was buzzing. The hotel was buzzing, and then wasn't buzzing as much once everything started to shut down that early morning and afternoon. So I think it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how we feel, but I think all of us will be focused just on getting ready for Northwestern or Minnesota.
Thank you.
We got time for 3 quick ones. Dan Hope.
Hi, Chris. Just wanted to ask you, I know that, Kyle and Seth and Justice, those guys have all been dealing with some injuries. Is there a concern at all going into this week of having to play on back-to-back days and those guys not being able to get as much rest?
I'm interested to see, obviously we take it one game at a time, but I am interested to see what that would look like for us given, we've not got some guys. Kyle is feeling good right now. He is feeling good. His legs are feeling good. His head's in a good, everything's fine there. Justice has not been able to practice this week just with, he had to have a procedure, but he'll be back here today. So hopefully he'll get back today here. Musa and Seth are just managing Musa's ankles better. But I think, it'll be interesting to see if we get beyond game one and kind of what that looks like afterwards.
Okay, Steve Hellwagon.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about end of game situations. Obviously, Michigan State and Illinois, a lot was made of those 2 games. Just some of the clear outs for Dwayne didn't work out the way maybe you'd hoped, and he did draw a foul, as Robbie Hummel thought, against Michigan State. It was no call. I don't know what's your thought about that. What's the mindset you want your guys to go into? I assume you want them to step into a shot that they normally make and take it. I don't know, but what can you do?
Yeah, be aggressive. The 1-3 Kyle had, he made the exact same shot at Iowa, Steve. Literally, he had Kofi flying at him in this game. He had Garza flying at him in that game. I just think what you're trying to correct, Steve, is some of the decisions that were made a couple times with the ball, challenging Kofi one time at the rim, some of those kind of things. But we got to play with a little bit more force when we drive it, Steve. If they're not going to call foul where there's contact, you got to make it obvious. So I think those are all things that we've worked on trying to correct. But there is a freedom you want your guys to play with too, and aggressiveness you want them to play with.
Thanks.
Okay, final one from Tim Hall.
Last one. Hey, Coach, I just did a quick one on recruiting. I heard you on the radio show talking about Kalen and getting the excitement going for him and Malachi. Just with this being, we know about the dead period or the no contact, but with it being March, what's the balance there with time you spend on that and, keeping in contact with guys, getting them excited about, what this month is here at Ohio State, what the tournament run is like?
Well, it's as it always is. It's full speed ahead in terms of recruiting contacts and phone calls. And, I was on the phone last night talking to some recruits and it's a daily thing, as we all know, Tim, with that. And it's nonstop. What I was asked about was Malachi and Kalen, and I'm really excited about them. Obviously, we all, I think, on this call understand how important Malachi was for us in so many ways in terms of what we need next year, and obviously his impact. I think he's one of the best players. He's clearly one of the best players in the country. So we can't wait to get him here. He's got a high school championship hopefully to finish up, and then Kalen obviously has got long-term potential. We feel like but it's exciting to think about, what we can be moving forward here as well. But our focus right now, so as coaches, obviously we're doing that, and we're always in the midst of that. And, one thing I will add, I didn't mention earlier that I want to make sure is just to, congratulate EJ and Dwayne on their all-conference honors. It's the first time since our first year that we've had two players named to all-conference. And when you do it in a league that, quite honestly, this league is much better than it was that first year. It's a great accomplishment for those guys. They'll be the first to admit their teammates played an important role in that. And in those honors, when you have 14 teams and you have 3 teams, only 3 teams, there's a lot of good players, unfortunately, that get kind of left out in that. So congratulate those guys, congratulate our team on that. And, as a coach and the coaching staff, that's exciting to see that with those young men. So hopefully we can see more of those in the future. But yeah, it's nonstop. Recruiting is nonstop.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, Coach. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Hey, Dan,
All right.
quick question.
Yeah.
Are you guys running the post games, or is Big Ten going